Okay, fine. Sure. So till now we have seen some, something like what is protocol, what is TCP/IP, UDP. We have seen few even the examples on how the direct connection oriented protocol networking works and how connectionless works. The same thing, all these terminology and all, right, will also work for web development. That is why we have gone through this in order to make sure that you are somewhat clear about how the networking things work, right? That's the main concentration over here. Now, as you have some knowledge on what exactly is going on, let's get and see the server technology first, right? Now, how does it work and all? Now, whenever I say server technology, right, it contains two things. So, one is a physical server, right, and it also contains something called web server, right? So, these are the two things which I am actually talking about. The physical server is nothing but a machine which you are planning to make it as a server. Now, here, when we are talking about website or web application, right? So the contact point will be only at one place, right? Yes, as of now, let's take it as one place because you can actually make, for load balancing, you can make that in multiple places, but let's not get into the complex one. Let's get into the very simple one, which is there will be one server where you'll place all your pages and all at one place, and guys across the world, the clients across the world, whoever want to browse on a website, they'll be having the URL, they'll be providing the URL, and they'll browse on. So whenever they browse a website, so what happens is it will be triggering our web server, right? It will be triggering our physical server and web server. I'll show you this in a diagrammatic way, not to worry, right? And then the web server is a main person who takes a request, builds a request, and sends a response. That is how the server technology, crudely, works. Now let us go and see how that is mapped in our diagrammatic way, right? And then we'll understand some scripting, which is server.
So, Srinath, have questions. So, what is the difference between the two, physical and web server?
Sorry, difference between these two? You mean the difference between a server and a web server?
Yes.
Okay, the server basically...
The physical server and web server.
Yeah, the physical server is nothing but a machine, which is hardware. Okay, like let us say to give an example, your laptop is a physical server, physical machine, right? And the software like Skype you have installed is called as a software. In the same way, your physical server is nothing but a machine, which is hardware, and web server is something which is a software on it. Right? You getting Prakriti?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
this is something which I'm talking completely about hardware, right? Basically, when we say, like, if you're working in a company, right? The workstation, whatever you are working, you are sitting and working, is called as a native workstation, right? So it is a workstation which is a physical machine which you are working on. Let us say if you are working on a Dell machine, right, Dell CPU, that CPU monitor, the combination of everything, we call it as a workstation. Am I right? Right. So whenever you work on a company, you will be getting workstation, and within workstation you will be getting operating system. Until unless you have operating system, you can't work, right? Am I right? So that is called your physical machine. Whatever you are getting is a workstation. Here, the physical thing what we are going to place at one place is called as a physical server or a server. Right? So within which, if you don't have operating system in your workstation, you can't work. In the same way, if you don't have something called web server, this web server name this nomenclature is something which I am actually pointing to some servers called Tomcat or WebLogic, right? Or some JBoss. Right? These are something called web servers. Right? These are softwares. And these are hardware. That is what the difference is. So whenever I call server, right, whenever I say server, right, it is server which is hardware. Whenever you say web server, which means web server should be mounted on hardware, which is this, right? That is what is this.
okay.
Fine, not a problem.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll just now we'll first understand how the web application or something works over the network, right? Because till now what we have seen is we have seen something called there is a machine, right? Let us say it's a machine one, right? And we have some program, let us say server programs running. So we have created a server and client, right? Let us say that simple class of the code here. Let us say there is machine 2, right? And let us say here I have a client. So this client is nothing but I'm taking it as a socket client and a socket server, right? Socket client and socket server, which is, so the socket thing works across TCP/IP, right? If you remember, TCP/IP is something which is connection oriented program. Now whenever client wants to talk to server, there is a physical connection being happening directly to the server, IP and port. So IP and port combination of these two is called as a socket, right? Now this is something where you have a direct connection, or I can say direct LAN, local area network, right? You have a direct LAN, physical wire connected in between machine 1 and machine 2 through some routers. Anyways, if you don't have router, you cannot create multiple, I mean you cannot create something on network or LAN, right? So here, so this is something where there is a router, but it doesn't matter. We feel that it's a direct connection between machine 1 and machine 2. This is what we have in a desktop-based applications when you try to connect to server. As you have seen something called socket programming or UDP programming, which is connection-less programming. But in server-based, right, it is not the case. Yes, the resemblance will be the same. Like whenever you say google.com, we feel that you're actually connecting to web server of Google, and you're getting the response. But it is not that simple. It's something which is complicated here, right? The network itself is something which is more sophisticated than we think. Now, let us say this is a machine, which is a physical machine I was talking about, and this is, let me take an example of Google, right? Let us say this is a CPU or a computer or a physical server which is placed at the premises of Google, right? Now what happens, Google have got a website to search. What they'll do, they'll place all the pages, let us say, in the server. Let us say these are pages or images, everything. All the website resources are placed at one place of a server. So this is a physical machine, like computer I can say. It's a computer or a supercomputer which have got very good processing speed, maybe quad-core processors and shared CPUs and some 16 to 32 GB of RAM. It's a supercomputer which we use for servers, right? Now this server have got, now this Google machine computer have got all the pages in it. Now if you place all the pages at server, it doesn't mean that anyone can access this directly. Let us say here we are here. Let us say we are clients C1, right? Client 1 and client 2. It can be any number of clients, right? So we are actually browsing on using our laptop, let us say, right? Now, until unless this Google is exposed over the network, right, we cannot connect directly because we don't know what is the IP of Google. Am I right? You will never know IP of any server directly. I'm not saying we can't get it. We can get IP of any machine over the network, but yes, if you are a direct user of website, you don't have to remember your IP. You just have to remember something called google.com. Am I right? Now, what is google.com here? Now, how this computer knows there is a request is a question, is something which we have to understand. Right now, google.com is nothing but a domain name. Guys, here I am just taking an example of google.com. It can be anything. It can be gmail.com, facebook.com, Twitter, or your own, let us say if you have your own website, right, xyz.com, anything. The name of that is called as a domain. Now, how does we create a domain? Now, we will not create a domain. There are some community called network providers, right? They will have their own hub. The main player here is Internet Hub. So in this hub, right, what they will do is your machine will have certain IP and you will be exposing some port, right? So this IP and port in the case of web application is being created by someone called web server, which is the example we'll be taking up is Tomcat. Right? Web server, and these pages and all will be hosted on this. That is what we called as a deploying a website on a server. So till in this machine we'll do everything. We are not going to touch any hub or not. No, we are not going to do that. So we have all the pages and images, all the resources here, and we have configured one web server called Tomcat, let's say, right? And all the pages and images we are giving to this web server, right? Anyways, we'll see the complete practicality of everything. Don't worry, right? We'll create a server, we'll create a client. So my machine itself will act as both the server and client. Don't worry, I'll show you that, right? Now, what happens here? I said it's a google.com, which means internet provider, what they'll do is they'll register this IP with this hub. Let us say IP, this Google machine's IP is some 197.8.7.1, let us say. So what they'll do, they'll make this as a static IP. I've already explained you what is static IP. It will never change, right? And what they'll do in a machine, in their repository, they'll just say google.com will always point to one IP called this IP, one which is Google's IP. Right? This will be in hub. Now, for this, obviously Google or anyone who want to buy this domain have to pay the money, because this registration is not a free registration. You have to pay it for network providers. Now, let's talk about hub. What is this hub? Hub is nothing but whenever we talk about connecting or taking internet. Let us take an example of internet. Now, what we do is we always go for our nearest network provider or internet provider to get the internet connection. It can be either broadband connection or a Wi-Fi connection or a someone who is providing USB modem, anything. What they'll have, they will have their own hub at their place. Now, how this big hub is created is, let us say you are in a city 1, right? That city 1 will have one hub, right? And again, maybe that in that same city itself, what they'll do, let me just create that picture. Let us say there is a city 1, right? So in that city 1, let us say there are some 4 to 5 streets. Let us say there are 3 streets. So this street 1 have got one hub, and one hub. Hub is nothing but when you take an internet connection, those providers will actually give the hub. Now what happens here is, whenever you are registering your machine, which means your machine is static. Let us say there is you have hosted one website where IP is something, it is connected. So this is also connected. In the same way, here the clients are. So the clients who are in this street are connected to this hub. And the same way, let us say 4th street guys are there. So what happens, for one complete street, right, there will be one hub, let us say. And all these hubs will be connected to this. Right? In the same way, if you take a city 2, right, city 2, again let us say it has got more number of streets, right? And let us say more number of router hubs or internet hubs, and all these hubs will be connected to this. City, let us say city 2 has got one more hub, and this is city 2 hub and city 1 hub. Now, the whole country will have one bigger hub, and all the city hubs will be connected to this. Right? And across the continent, there will be one more hub, and all the country hubs will be connected to that. Right? And across the world, right? So each and every continent will have their own hubs, and across the world there will be a bigger, more hubs, and all this will be connected to that. That is how your internet network is being created. By connecting all the local hubs, it will become some bigger city hub. All cities will connect to one country hub. Or maybe state hub. All state hubs will connect a bigger hub where you have a country hub and a continent and a world. That is how your internet connection is being made. Now, when I am talking about one server, which is google.com, it will be in one server. Like it is in one city, and this client is called as a google.com, right? This google.com, whenever we register, right, this will be shown across complete hub because it is internally connected to each and every hub. Now let us say this google.com is in US, let us say. Now some person who is at some other city in India, let us say he want to browse on some google.com, what happens? So this guy will be touching upon his own router with his own hub. That hub will search here. In the same way it will search in a bigger hub which is across the world. Then this hub will connect to the google.com of this place because there is a web server planted here. Now this web server is responsible to give the response to this connection. This connection will be taken up here, and it will be served to you. That is how the internet works, right? So this is what is something called hub being created. That's why we say some lines are being connected over the sea, we say. So under sea, if anything goes wrong, there will be disconnection between so many hubs. That is why they say that yes, that country's hub is being disconnected. They are establishing that, right? That is what it is, because all the hubs are being interconnected, and it's a very complicated thing, right? You cannot just say there are two wires which are connected. No, in between there are so many routers or so many adapters being used to increase the band, right? They have to maintain the bandwidth and all, right, across the complete nations. That is how it created. That is how when we are talking about one city, one location here, which is Google server, you have the local router or hub here where we are hosting google.com with our IP. Now whenever clients trigger the google.com, which means it will search, okay, which IP we are actually referring to. That machine will be accessed through a web server. A web server is a guy or is a main component which accepts the request. If you shut down your web server, I'm talking about web server, guys, which is software. I'm not talking about physical machine here. If you don't make your server up, how to make a server up, how to make it down, right? How to accept the client, I'll explain. I'll explain you practically, right? Not to worry. Now here, whenever request comes, this web server knows, okay, this is my Google search page. If you go to these pages, it will get that page and it will give you back the response. The response will be taken to the router or hub and it will be served to your client. That is how it happens, right? And this complete connection to hub and from connection hub to server and back to hub and back to client this completely works on some protocols. It can be HTTP, right? Or it can be HTTPS, it can be FTP, right? Any protocol. But we'll be mainly checking all the web application, web development things we'll be checking is on HTTP. This is the protocol which we are going to use, HTTP. And this HTTP mainly works on TCP/IP, which is connection-oriented, connection-oriented protocol. Why? Because for each and every request you have to get the response, which means if it is mandatory that you have to get the response, obviously we have to go to some connection-oriented protocol, right? And in our basically we have two things, which is TCP/IP and UDP. TCP/IP is a connection-oriented one and UDP is connection-less one. But here we need a connection-oriented. Why? Let us say if you are browsing any banking application, banking website, right? If you are transferring some amount to some other person, which means you have to get the response that yes, it is successfully sent. Until unless you have connection-oriented, you will never get that, right? That's why the complete HTTP, which is hypertext transfer protocol thing, will work completely on TCP/IP. That is how the server technology works, or website thing works. Now here, let us just go to this component, which is we are more interested on this server, right? Now here, I said you have a server. Let us say whenever I say server, it's a computer or right a bigger server. So the machines which can serve pages, we call it as a server, and it is basically hardware, which is a computer. Now in this computer, let us say whatever you have deployed, your JSP, servlets or some web pages or basic HTML pages, right? you have deployed it in your place. You have just copied all the files in your machine here. Let us say it is in D drive or some drive. You have created a folder and you have copied. Okay. Let us say this is some XYZ project. Here you have some 10 pages and some 20 classes now. Right. Now, so in order to make this expose over the network or over the internet, right, you have to have a mediator engine to, which knows that yes, whatever request is coming, you have to pick that page, get it and send it. Right? That component is called as a web server. Is a web server. This web server provides support to accept the request and send the response, picking up this page, whatever. So this location may have so many pages. It may have 1,000 different pages or so many classes. But with respect to the request, it will go to this directory, right? So we'll be mentioning this directory things, everything here. Don't worry, I'll be showing you that, right? And it will pick the corresponding page and it will serve. That is what our web server does. Now, why do we have this web server? Is again, let us say I was talking about client, only one client. Now, let us say this is some Google server, right, or Facebook server. How many requests will be coming up? There will be so many. There will be million of requests will be coming up now. So this web server must and should have something called balancing, right? Now, let us say client 1 is asking for some profile page, which means among the whole request, this request should go to web server, and pertaining to this request, it should get the details and it should send it to the correct person. That is very important. That technology is being taken care by completely your web server, right? Right? Let us say if you are logging in, let us say 10 different people are logging in into Facebook, right? Which means the person 1 should get it wherever he logs in. He should get into his own profile page, right? It doesn't mean that if all the 10 people are logging in at the same time, the profile pages will not be shuffled, right? Corresponding request should get the response at the same machine itself. That will be maintained by your website. That is what is web server here, right? So the web server which will be talking is Tomcat, right? And for all these technologies, whatever I was talking about this here is nothing but your servlets or JSPs, right? Or some actions. So that is or basically HTML pages. All these things will be placed at here. That is what is a basic website. You are placing it here and exposing it to web server in order to make it live to the network. That is what is a the basic web development or website. That's how the website works. This is something which is same across everything. There is nothing different which you can see over the network or over the internet. This is a simple technology how this works. But yes, the main things will be complicated more. How you maintain this and all, right? That is some other question again. That is how internet hub and all work. That is what is a physical server and web server. Now, let's come back to how we can actually configure our Tomcat. So we'll first see what is Tomcat. I mean, how we can actually configure the Tomcat. As I said, now, even if you want to develop an application or web application in your Eclipse, right? In our Eclipse, right? Now let us say we are going to develop some. Anyways, and then we come to servlets or JSPs, right? We will be doing something called running the servlet or running the JSP and all. Now, keep in mind that your servlet, JSPs, everything are a normal file, right? But what you are trying to do is you are trying to browse that and interpret that complete HTML or anything into a view form, right? And view form is nothing but a browser. Let us say you are actually browsing that in your Internet Explorer on Mozilla, right? So there should be some medium which is converting the part of code whatever you are writing into some view. So that is nothing but a Tomcat. Now here, even if you are writing so many programs like servlets or JSPs or HTMLs, there should be some medium, right? That medium even you have to create in your Eclipse. Now here, the question is how we can actually configure our Tomcat in our Eclipse, right? That's the first thing what we have to do, right? Now, you can actually download your Tomcat, right? Let us just see that. So now here you can see if you go to Tomcat server. Anyways, I've downloaded that, but let me show you that. If you go to Apache Tomcat, right? So Tomcat is Apache's product, right? Just click on Tomcat 7 because it's the latest one. So click on Apache 7 download. So this is the page, right? From there you can actually download the Tomcat, right? Now here, if you can see, there are so many things in here. But what we are more interested in is you have got a latest version which is 7.0.42 is the latest version of your Tomcat, right? Now over here you can see that there are binary distributions, you have full documentation. Yes, you can also get all these things, right? What are the different documentation here is nothing but in different release they will be providing different different services, right? That's what it is. Now here you can choose one of Windows. If you are working on Windows, you can actually go for one of them, right? If you're actually working on Mac, you can maybe go for tar, or tar is something which is used for maybe Linux server, right? You can choose upon whatever server you want. I hope if you guys are using Windows, you may have to go for one of these. If you're using Windows 7, which is 64-bit, you may go for this one. Click on this and download, right? And if it is 32-bit, which is either XP or Windows 7 but 32-bit machine, go for this, right? So that is how it's a normal zip file if you download, right? Now I have downloaded one server which is Tomcat. Now you can see here my version was 41. That's okay, right? It was the latest one is 42, right? It just came, it seems, right? So recently I've downloaded. You can see the date. I've downloaded it a few days back, which was 41 version, Apache Tomcat 41. Now whenever you download this, right, you can, and whenever you extract this folder, you can see these things. This is nothing but your Tomcat, right? Where you have downloaded your zip files. Now again, you can see here there is something called installer, right? You can configure your Tomcat in two ways. Either download the complete zip file and use it. This is something which is a crude way. This is something, if you use this, you can understand the configuration part and everything much better, right? But this is something which you can install in your machine and use it as a how to start and all. UI will be provided here. But yes, this is a simple way to understand. But let's go and understand this way, because if you can understand this one, I'm sure you'll understand this. Anyways, when we go to frameworks, right? When we move into frameworks, then I'll explain you how we can actually install our Tomcat and then how we can actually do that. But as of now, we'll see the bigger way, right? So we'll see the bigger picture of Tomcat. So that's why I've downloaded my 64-bit zip of Tomcat, which was 7041. Now you don't have to do anything over here, right? But only thing is, all your bins, libs, cons, everything will be exposed directly if you have this part, right? That is what is a Tomcat. Now here you have few things which you have to keep in mind, which is very important here. Now I said, if you remember, I was talking about something called IP and port, right? Your IP and port, right? Anyways, for IP, web server doesn't have to do anything. Whenever I call web server, just keep in mind that I'm talking about Tomcat or WebLogic or any web server as such, right? So website IP is something based on your machine IP. That IP will be considered as a current web server IP. Now how about port? When we come to port here, right? So here you can actually mention your own port here. Now how to do that is, in Tomcat Apache folder you have something called conf. This is something which is a main folder which is called as a configuration folder, right? Let me go into that. Now here you can see so many files, right? In these files, right, you have something called server file. Let me open this. Now this is something which is a server.xml file. Now here you can see there are so many things being defined and so many things are commented or anything. Don't touch them. They are something which are by default. Now here what we are more interested is here connector tag. Right? This connector tag represents the endpoint port. Now here you can see as of now we have actually and I have actually change it to 4 nines. Basically it will be 8080 port. Right? If you download the Tomcat, right? If you download it and keep it ready, right? It will be 8080 port. But yes, I have made it some other port, right? Which is 999, right? To make sure I want to use this port for my web application. I'll show you where you can actually see this port, right? But yes, you can see that in my Tomcat, I'm actually configuring the port, which means whenever any web application here, I was talking about Google server, right? Whenever any domain is registered, right? This web server anyways will be listening to this IP, and the port will be the port which we are defining here, which is in connector port, connector tag. This is how you configure a port. Now, this is how you say yes, my Tomcat is going to listen to this port, which is 4 nines. That is where you go for server. Right? That is what we say it's a server. Now, the basic thing is, the first thing what we'll see is how can we start a server in my machine. Right? So, how can we start is you have something called, you can just go to bin. Right? In this bin, there are so many files, but in this you will see two different files, which is startup and shutdown. These are two batch files which we have, startup and shutdown. We also find two different files called startup and shutdown, which are shell files. So this .sh is something which is understandable by Linux service, right? So whatever we call in our Windows machine, right? Windows machine, the executable thing is a batch file, but in Linux it is a shell file, the extension shell. So don't bother about these two. So they are covered both because if you copy the same server into Linux, you can actually use this. But as we are in Windows, let's talk about these two, right? Which is startup and shutdown. Now, when I click on startup, right? See, this is how your Tomcat started. Right? Now this will start the Tomcat. Now you can see that you will get so many things here, like opening the port and all, right? And now you can see the server startup in so and so seconds. Right? Now our machine is started. Now you can see here starting protocol handler. You can see that it has started in something called 9999. So this is what is a port which you have started. Now let's go and see whether this has actually started or not. Let me go to Internet Explorer. Now how can we check whether our server is started or not is like this. Let's go to, so you have to go to HTTP, right? And you have to say something called localhost, right? Localhost is something, right, where you are mentioning that yes, I am trying to, because your server is in local, right? You have started using your local IP. So in order to mention your local IP, you don't have to actually take the IP address. You can just say localhost, right? And the port you are mentioning, if you can remember the the URL which we are mentioning, yes, this one, where we said you have your localhost or domain, you have a colon and port. So this port is something which you have to mention. As of now, as our Tomcat is running on 4 nines port, you have to mention that over here, which means just go and say colon 9999. This is my localhost. Click on enter. Right? Can you see this? Now, which means if you can see this page, if you can see this page, which means you can see here, if you are seeing this, you have successfully installed Tomcat. Right? Now our Tomcat is ready. This is how you start. Now you can see this is running fine. Right? Now in order to shut down it, just say shut down. Right? So now it will call this and it will shut down. Now if you refresh this again, right, now you can see page came onto this page, right? Now you can see my web server is not ready, right? Which means even if I am going for localhost or some port, which means I cannot get the page because my server is down. That is how you do something called start your server and stop your server externally. But yes, when you are developing something, you don't need this. Don't worry about this. When you are developing some application in Eclipse, right, you don't need this. Now, let us go and see how we can actually deploy our application or configure this Tomcat to our Eclipse. That is the main thing which you have to understand in this class, right? Now for that you have to understand this part. Now you can see in Eclipse, right, there are two things, which is Java EE and Java. These are called as perspectives, or we can call it as a template provided for, if you are going for normal web applications with Java product and all, you can select the Java perspective where your standard edition and everything will be exposed. Now when I click on Java EE, just check this out, right? There are few things which are shown. When I click on Java EE, right, you can see that the view got changed, right? And so it removes the view of a web application. Now you can see the servers part here. Right? So previously there were no servers. You can see data sources and so many things, right? You can see some servers here. Now if you are not able to see, let us say if you are not able to see so many things here, now how to get the server? We are in Java EE perspective of our Eclipse, which is same to the template, but you can't see server. Now how to get that server part is like this. You have something called window here. Go to window and you have something called show view. So here it provides everything. If you are not able to see any of them, you can just go here. Now I want this tab to be shown, which is server. Click on that. Now you can see the servers. Right? That is how you can see server. Right? Now let me click on so as of now nothing is being added here, right? Now here you can't see any folder called servers. Right? Now how to configure is this. This is very important, guys. Now here click on new server wizard. Now when you click on this wizard, now you can see there are so many things which you can see, right? So this is something which is being provided by your Eclipse. Now based on the version of Eclipse you are using, you may be using Juno, or you may be using the latest one, Kepler, or Indigo, or the older one, right? Based on that, right, so these things will be configured. As the Apache server is running latest, so that's why you can see the Tomcat server, different versions of server you can actually configure. Now as we have downloaded something called Apache's Tomcat 7, so that's why we can select this. Let us say you are actually going for some WebLogic or WebSphere IBMs. You can even configure that to this. Or JBoss, you can configure that to this. JBoss different versions. You have different things, right? Among all the things, we are interested on Apache, which is on Tomcat 7 server, because we will be working on this. Now you can see here, it is asking for the name, server's host name. If I define some other name here, some XYZ, then obviously you have to go and browse on your XYZ. That is a local host. But yes, don't do that. Always go for localhost, because whatever the name we are giving is not standard. But localhost is universal standard of representing your local IP. Right? So let me select the Tomcat version 7 and localhost, and let me just say next. Now you can see here the name of this. Let us keep the name as same, Apache version 7.0. Now here there are two options here, Tomcat installation directory. Either you can download and install, right? But if you download and install, you can see here your Eclipse is configured for this version 12. But here you can see the latest version. What we have downloaded is nothing but your 41 or maybe 42, which we are talking about this. Doesn't matter, right? Now here, what you have to do here is you have to go give the directory until your this folder. Now this folder should contain your bin, configuration, lib and all. You have to configure. Take this folder, copy it and paste it here. Now even if you remove something, right, it says, see here, the specified Tomcat instance that doesn't exist. You have to go to the actual directory there. That is what is a directory is here. Now the next step is the JRE. Now maybe you can clear Workbench. Workbench is nothing but an Eclipse JRE, or You see here, if you have installed your latest JRE, you can also go for that. You can also say JRE 7, right? Or you can also say workbench 7. If you can keep this right, workbench, whenever you change any JRE component for your Eclipse, it will be changed automatically, right? So you can also keep this. This works everywhere, not to worry, right? Or if you don't have any JREs installed in your, you can actually install your JRE. That's fine. But best way is to keep the workbench and configure your Eclipse before itself, right? Now let me go next. Next, this is something where as of now we haven't created any of the web projects, right? These are two things which is a normal Java project. We don't have anything else here. That's why you can see available are nothing and configure nothing. Now available are something if you already have web applications and if you want to configure them or if you want to mount them on the server, you can actually go there. We'll be coming to this part again, don't worry, right? And let me finish this. Click on finish. Now when you click on finish, you can see two things happen. The first thing is the Tomcat server is here now and you can see the servers folder here created. Right? So you can see here that your Tomcat server. So there are so many files which you have seen already, which is server. If you go to server, right, .xml, the whole XML is copied here. Now you can see the connector port is 9 because we are actually importing or we took the Tomcat version of this, whatever we have done. That is being copied on here. That is how you configure your server to the Tomcat, right? But anyways, don't worry. This is not the only one class where I'll be explaining this Tomcat configuration. When we go to frameworks, again I will explain this Tomcat configuration because this web server is not about Tomcat. It is what we have to learn is the web server configuration. As of now, as we are learning Tomcat, that's why I said Tomcat. If you are actually going for maybe WebSphere in your office, maybe the configuration will be same. There won't be any change, right? There will be provision where you can actually change the port. There will be provision where you can actually configure the servers, right? As of now, the servers is stopped. Now, in this way, you can actually configure any number of servers. You can configure Tomcat. You can also configure that if you want to configure, right, you can just go here, right, and just say new server, right? You can see here there was one server. I can also configure multiple servers here. Maybe I may go to Oracle, maybe the standalone WebLogic server, right? I can also do that. Now you can see the server name is different. Or go to IBM WebSphere. You can do that. Multiple servers here, right? That doesn't matter. The multiple servers. Now how can I host particular server? Right? There will be so many web applications, right? How can I map them? Is your add remove, right? As there are no, it says, see, when I say add and remove, it says no resources are found because there are no web projects being created. Right? We'll be coming to that again. Right? That is what it is. Now you can see here when I run this URL, it still says page cannot be displayed. Now from our Eclipse, how to start the web server. Now you can see here the status of Tomcat server is stopped. Now how to start is either you can just right click on this or just say start, or when you select this, right, you have an option here which says start. So when I click on this, you can see it will start. Here you don't have to go for patch or anything. Don't worry about that. Don't at all worry about that. Now you can see on a simple click, it will take care of everything. Eclipse is so user friendly to start any server. It can be configure any server, right? It will help you to start that, right? Not to worry on that, right? That is how you actually start. Now let's go back here and just refresh this up, right? Anyways, as of now you can't see this because you don't have resources, right? When we get some resources, then you can see this thing, right? As of now, not to worry, right? Right? And if you want to stop the server directly, you can stop here. Anyways, if you close your Eclipse or stop here, right, both the things will stop your server. Right? That's how it goes. The stop is, now you can see it is stopping, it will stop the server, right? Again, you want to start, just go to servers, just start. Right? So now you stop and start your server. Use in your Eclipse. Now, sometimes you may have to restart, right? Right click and you have an option of restart, or you can just select it and click on the same button again. Right now you can see the status came as restart the server. Click on that, it will stop and then it will start. That is what is now in console. So whatever is being in red here, right? Don't worry about this. Something which is the same thing which we have seen in our batch file. When you click on batch in our command prompt, you have seen so much of log. That is a Tomcat log. Don't worry about it. Now you can see the same thing we have seen there, which is starting protocol handler, which is Tiplan, and we started on this. Right? That is what is the same thing which is happening. Now here in Eclipse we have one more thing, guys. This is not the server part. If you want to see here, if you want to see more logs, console logs, right? There is one way to increase. Just right click on your console. Just go to preferences. Now here you can see the buffer size, right? Console buffer size. You cannot give very bigger, but yes, you can give till just go to 0. Yeah, it says buffer size must be between 0 to some. It's 1 million maybe, right? Or yes, it's 1 million. So just do that. The maximum size. So before the default will be, I hope it will be some 80,000 or so or something. But yes, you can increase that so that more log will be shown. Because in our web application it is needed, right? We need that. Not only web application, it can be frameworks or anything. We need, if you want to see more logs, because you will be programming heavily, right? Which means you will be actually showing or you will be making or printing some lines in console. Just make that. So before starting, just make your Eclipse to the maximum buffer size so that you can see the bigger console. Right? So that is how you can. Yeah. So that is how we act. We work with Tomcat, right? Anyways, in each and every class, we'll see how to run Tomcat, how to deploy anything, each and every servlet and all. We'll be checking out that. But yes, I hope you have understood this server technologies and Tomcat. Right? So that is how you basically configure a Tomcat in a website. Now till this part, we are done with configuring of a Tomcat. Now tomorrow we'll start with fresh servlets, right? And we'll see a basic servlet, how we can actually run that and how it works, right? What is a servlet first, right? We'll see everything tomorrow. Fine guys, so let's wind up here. You guys have any doubts here? Maybe let me share this